Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back again to The View from Here, Behind Enemy Lines. We have with us an author and publicist, Drew Allen, who is going to talk about a few things that are, a few current events, including the Charlie Kirk assassination, which that's your latest book. You've written other books, correct?
Yep. My latest book is this one. Yeah, For Christ and Country, The Martyrdom of Charlie Kirk.
Right.
Oh, you wrote that. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah. When I told Mike that you'd written a book, he said, already they got a book on the assassination.
Well, it's probably
that was pretty fast.
I mean,
anyway, okay. You also work with Publius.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. Charlie Kirk was our client last year.
Who was your client?
Charlie Kirk was our client last year. Me and AJ Rice.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
All right. Well, we're not going to be able to get him on the show anymore. Anyway, sorry about that.
We're going to start with a happy thought. We have the happy thought jar. Now,
we haven't done this in a long time, and now he wants to go back.
We've had about 50 or 60 happy
bear with
thoughts
us for a moment.
An example of one of those happy thoughts is put on your positive pants. Okay? So here's the thing. Since we're all out of happy thoughts, we're going to leave that up to you, Drew, to give us a happy thought.
Jesus. Nothing like putting pressure on our guest.
It could be
man. Yeah. My happy thought, man. I woke up this morning. I got two young girls, a 2.5-year-old and an almost 1-year-old. I'm married. I've got a beautiful family. And every day I thank God for that.
See, now it worked out now, didn't it?
That's a way better happy thought than anything you ever pulled out of that jar when we did that.
That's what she said.
All right. Anyway, okay. Well, since you're our guest, I want you to start talking about whatever you'd like to talk about. The Charlie Kirk thing, the reaction from the left. Oh, but I may as well ask you this. People are up in arms because of what President Trump said after the murders of Rob Reiner and his wife, because he kind of blamed. They said, "Oh, he's putting the blame on Reiner himself for his assassination." But Mike reminded me just before you came on that after the Butler attempted assassination, Reiner said in public that he wished the guy hadn't missed. So it's understandable that Trump would react the way he did. I don't think they can really blame him for that. He didn't say anything really bad, but it wasn't nice.
No, look, Trump puts out a lot of thoughts. He's talks off the cuff 99 times out of 100. He's 100% right. I wouldn't have said what he said. I don't like the thing, but I'm not going to sit here. I don't need to condemn Donald Trump either. The only people that want this condemned, or someone like me to condemn it, are a bunch of leftists who are celebrating after Charlie Kirk's death, who were celebrating after Rush Limbaugh's death, who openly espouse violence against us. So they don't have any moral high ground to stand on. So the idea that I'm going to modify or react to something with my behavior based on what the left demands, no, they can pound sand. They don't even have a seat at the table anymore after what they've done. So I could care less.
I completely agree with you.
That Trump is still a human being. And if I was standing up and somebody almost killed me by shooting off a portion of my ear, and then I found out that guy over there said, wish he had actually succeeded, yeah, I might have some pretty bad feelings about that individual, So we have to remember sometimes that he is a human being, and he has been kicked around a lot.
Well, in the case of Rob Reiner, Rob Reiner had horrible things to say about Trump constantly. Not only that, Rob Reiner started an organization with Mike Morrell, with a bunch of CIA deep staters, to try and get Trump on Trump-Russia collusion. Rob Reiner was one of the people who was out there calling for Donald Trump to be imprisoned every day, using his megaphone to call Trump, all these terrible names. So obviously, was it a misstep in any way you look at it? Yeah, because it's like a PR situation that now we have to deal with, where what the left's going to demand. But like I said, You've said it. You've pointed it out. He's not perfect. He's doing a heck of a job for this country. And he's been through hell by these people. And they continue to try and assassinate us and kill us. And they haven't changed their rhetoric, which is ultimately responsible for the dehumanization of conservatives that leads to predictable violence. The militant trans movement is out there killing kids. And when you get held of their manifestos, the manifestos read like a Barack Obama speech, a Joe Biden speech, a CNN panel. You know, white people are evil. You know, blah blah blah. I mean, it just fascist, Nazi, Hitler. So no, I'm not here to be lectured by the left. In fact, I wrote a book lecturing them on the lack of accountability for their rhetoric getting us killed.
How did you? Okay, before you became a publicist, were you already writing, or how did that happen? How did you get involved with A.J. Rice and Publius and whatever else
Sure. Yeah. Well, my career trajectory is not very typical. I mean, I grew up in Dallas, Texas. I went to an all-male college, preparatory school, Jesuit Dallas, in fact. Very liberal, left-leaning. My family, my parents were conservative, thankfully. I've always been a conservative, but I've always been in these Democrat left-wing environments. So I went to Pepperdine University for college, but I had an acting scholarship. So I was a theater major. So obviously I wasn't around a bunch of conservatives there either. And then I moved to New York City as an actor. And about a year in, I got this crazy opportunity. I'll save the story for another time, but to move to Milan, Italy. So I speak Italian. I moved to Milan, Italy to work in fashion. I did that for 2.5 years. Italy is not a conservative place. It's a socialist country. And, I've produced a movie. COVID came around and I live in California. So that really kind of activated me, I guess, as somebody who had always been on the outside of politics. I mean, as a conservative, but with opinions. But I didn't make that my fight per se. But COVID changed that for me because I was fighting lockdowns and I lost all my friends because they were all Democrat friends for the most part in 2020 because I voted for Trump and I spoke out against the COVID lockdowns and all that sort of stuff. And I started writing then, and I wrote a book and self-published that book. And so the way I met A.J. Rice, who's one of the top publicists in the country for conservatives, A.J. was my publicist. So I had a friend. Actually, you remember Don Imus, the shock jock?
Yeah, I used to listen to him all the time in the late '60s, early '70s, whatever it was.
So one of Don Imus's daughters was a friend of mine,
Okay.
Elizabeth, who has since passed away. Elizabeth just felt like I had this ability. She thought I was talented. She thought I was articulate and smart. And she knew I was conservative, obviously. She shared those beliefs. And she really pushed me to get involved in politics in a serious way. And it was through her that I was introduced to A.J. Rice, and he became my publicist. And so I became a columnist, and I started writing in a professional way in that sense. And I was going on shows like this, talking about issues and so on and so forth. And then a couple of years in, AJ did something I don't think he's never done it before, but he offered me a job and he asked me to come and work for him. And so I became his VP, and I've been a publicist for several years now, and I've had the opportunity to work with Tulsi Gabbard and Dr. Ben Carson and Peter Navarro and Charlie Kirk, and it's a long list of very prominent individuals that I've had the opportunity to do PR for, and so but this is still me, even though I'm a publicist. This is how I started out, and this is what I really am passionate about doing.
Okay.
Well, it's kind of funny because Roy and I used to talk on the phone. We reconnected during the so-called COVID experience,
Reconnected.
So we were talking, and then Roy got the idea that we should record it, and so we did that, and somehow we kept going, and it's been over 4 years now, and we're not kicking down doors, but at the same time, we are getting some positive feedback, and we're having individuals like yourself who are, I would say, very sharp and capable, and have a real presence. And you've joined us here, and hopefully we can increase your reach, and hopefully we can become that much better having talked to you.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. And I think a lot of people share. I think you can put this in your happy jar or happy thought jar too. Is
Oh, wait a second, let me get it.
get that thing up.
Go ahead, I'm ready to catch.
So you can catch this. Look, you two are a perfect example of people that were motivated or inspired to, expand your own influence or, become more courageous in your, whether, political philosophy, religious philosophy, but love for this country obviously is what drove it, and recognizing that something was wrong. And and that was out of the just COVID tyranny, right? I mean, so I think there are millions of people like that. Not all of them have taken steps like you two to start a show, but I think that you can, to come back onto the book or whatever. Charlie Kirk's assassination. The silver lining in that is that, I mean, my story that I share is personal in terms of how it affected me. I've become more courageous. I've become my hunger for deepening my spiritual, even though I've always been a Christian, for example, I have this hunger like Charlie did now because of what his life meant and what I saw in it, to deepen my faith. And that faith gives me more conviction. So, for example, even though I'm not timid, even though I've been on shows, I go on shows, I write articles, I write op-eds, I write books, there was still a kind of remnant of fear in me that held me back from just being bold enough not to go and start fights, but to just have no fear about speaking my mind and understanding that what I was saying was true and not fearing the condemnation of man. I still had that because of losing those Democrat friends in 2020. And when Charlie died, I looked at what his life was and what he did and how fearless he was. And one of the things I wanted to understand is, how did he become Charlie Kirk, right? He wasn't always this guy. It was because of that hunger for knowledge of truth. He was forged in steel. I mean, he studied these issues rigorously, and he liked to debate. He liked to go into hostile environments. Most people don't want to go in hostile environments. They don't want to debate. But he relished it because he had such, not just courage, but that courage came from confidence because he studied these issues. Knowledge, yeah, knowledge. Wisdom, too.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen him, some of the clips from when he spoke at Oxford and debated some of the professors there and even students, and he never said anything racist, not there, not anywhere else that I've seen clips from. And he always held his own against these people who considered him an inferior because they were in Oxford, or they were in whatever college, and they finished college and he never finished college and so forth. Yet he was a brilliant mind. You don't need to have a diploma to be brilliant.
My biggest problem with Charlie Kirk is I took him for granted. I just presumed he was always going to be there. And even when Roy called me up and says, Charlie Kirk has been shot, I said, don't worry, God's going to take care of him. I just, because Trump dodged that bullet, I just thought, no way. And then he's dead. And then I'm going, no more Charlie Kirk. And then when I saw the reaction on a national level, I'm talking about the positive stuff, I said, oh my God, this could actually increase his reach, his capacity to be able to communicate with others. And here's the funny thing. There's somebody I know who is extremely left. Even they were brokenhearted about the loss of Charlie Kirk because the fact that it happened in front of his family. and it shouldn't have been done in the first place. But the point is that it was compounded, and they said, "Oh my God, young man, he never bothered nobody," and we're talking about somebody who is very, very left. So it touched people outside of his circle, and that is something positive that came out of it.
That's what you say in your book, Drew, that the left has caused that. The left has caused attacks on conservatives all the time, starting with what was his name, the senator or congressman during the baseball game years ago?
Steve Scalise. Yep.
Scalise, yes. During the Obama administration, I think it was. Obama's the one who regurgitated all the hatred towards between the parties, as well as between the races. I think racism was on its way out, on its way down, let's say at least, and Obama revived it. He gave it racism new life. But this time, people like you and I are the ones who are being accused of being the racists still, and we're the ones. I mean, whites are the ones who ended slavery in America, or worldwide.
Not just whites, but Republicans.
Yes.
And
even the British, who used to be involved in the slave trade, they ended slavery. A couple of centuries ago.
Yes. The French too.
Well, yeah. Look, the left's ideology it's just pure poison, and it's a politics of grievance. It's grievance based, and they can't win elections without obviously dividing our countrymen against one another and creating a bunch of groups of victims who need the Democrat Party or believe they need the Democrat Party. But it's a really sordid thing they do. It's not really complex what they're doing. It's there's a lot of different isms involved in it. It's not purely one thing, but it's closer and closer to Marxism. And, historically, the United States of America, they weren't able to use Marxism here like it was used in Russia, for example, to create revolution, because Americans rejected this, class-based distinction, because we had a very robust middle class, and we always have in this country because of capitalism, that it couldn't be applied the same way. And so when these academics came over in the 1920s and thereafter, and they were Marxists, they had to find a way to introduce it to American culture in a way that would be consumed. And so a lot of that was race-based. And, the Democrat Party, for example, they've always been the party of racism in this country. This myth that they had a big switch in the 50s is not true, just like everything they say out there.
Yeah.
So, and the reality of the situation is Black families and Black communities and Black people in this country have only gotten worse since the Democrat Party purported to be the champions of Blacks and pushed the civil rights axe on this country. And Democrats would isolate what I just said there, and they would call me a racist for making that statement. Now, I have all of the historical facts at my fingertips. I can explain this, but they can't and don't. See, I want, just like Charlie wanted, I want Black Americans to have wild success. I want every American, regardless of color, to have the greatest opportunity and success that they can achieve in life. And not everyone's going to be Elon Musk, but you can improve your circumstances. And I know what the antidote and the solutions are to provide that. Charlie Kirk provided it. And the Democrat Party called him, or they'll call me, racist for it, by saying that, Black people, based on even a Christian understanding or an American understanding, constitutional understanding, are created in the image of God. They aren't political pawns of the Democrat Party. Black people have the same opportunities and rights as everyone else, but the Democrat Party will continue to say, no, this country is irredeemably racist. And the reason they say that is because they want Blacks in perpetuity no matter how long it's been and how much distance there is between slavery or Jim Crow. They want them always to engage in this grievance politics because they need to be loyal to the Democrat Party. They always need, and it's a system of slavery. And you can apply that to other groups, white people in this country too, who buy into this left-wing orthodoxy. And the point is, Charlie Kirk would go on these campuses and he would refute all of this stuff. And anybody who watched it would be tempted to convert to conservatism. And he was dangerous to the left for that.
Yeah, he was. You know, another thing about Marxism, everyone who supports Marxism thinks it's, the common guy or the poor guy are the ones who are truly Marxists and pushing Marxism. They don't realize that it's the elite among us who are pushing Marxism on the rest of us, because just like in Animal House, we're all equal, except some are more equal than others. Those are the people with the money. Those people with the money are pushing Marxist policies despite being billionaires. Okay, and people can't put the two together. Plus, the racism, the divide with racism, is to keep us divided and at each other's throats so we don't notice what they're doing.
Yes, they're afraid of us. They're afraid of organizing national pride. They're afraid of people that believe in a power greater than themselves. They're afraid of people that put their family and their country first. They're afraid of anything that takes the place of government control. And so they use chaos to reconstruct us in our own way. They use chaos to go ahead and establish delineations in groups instead of recognizing everybody as being an American citizen. And I'm talking about true American citizens, not the ones that are citizens in name only. And so the thing is that the color revolution, that you did a podcast on it recently, are the Democrats performing a color revolution? If that's a question, my answer is yes, they are. And the thing is that this is an ideological revolution, and for some people, and I'm becoming one of them, it is a spiritual revolution. It's an assault on Earth from under forces.
Yeah. Everyone, that can't be repeated enough, Mike. I mean, everyone you talk to, that needs to be one of the central messages. That's one of the central messages of this book. And you're not going to save this country through politics alone. It's a spiritual war we're engaged in. One of my points is that, there are somewhere between 200 and 230 million Christians in the United States of America. That's a lot of Christians, people who claim to be Christians still. It's still the largest population of Christians in the world. Now, obviously, that doesn't account for woke churches and people that put politics above what the Bible says and God's word, etc. But my point is, we really need to be focusing our attention, or at least a component of this movement. Maybe I'll be the one, or one of the one. Charlie did this, I think, to some extent, greatly. But my focus is on this Christian portion, because if you had even a fraction of those 200 million Christians, right, who actually lived like Christians, who read their Bible, we would be an unstoppable force. We wouldn't be in this situation today. Now, there are many, many shortcomings amongst the Christian community. I am not perfect either. But what I mean by that is you have a lot of Christians who they don't vote. They believe this ideology from the godless left that wants to tell Christians what Christianity is, to isolate scripture and bastardize it and weaponize it against us. And you have a lot of Christians in this country who just are useless. Jesus's command is go forth and make disciples of all nations. Now, we're not Islam. We're not Muslims. That's not about having a caliphate established, but that is a clear demand on the Christian to go forth and proclaim the truth that Jesus Christ is Lord. Now, that's not to go on a street corner and everything else and hold up your signs and whatever else. That's ineffective anyway. But my point is, many Christians sit out. They take the left, which says, give unto Caesar, render unto Caesar what is Caesar. That's not a command for the Christian to allow dark forces to take over your country. Not at all. And so the Christian is the antidote to most of this mess. Actually, the only antidote. And Charlie's death really transformed me as a Christian because it made me realize that my faith needs to come first. And it wasn't coming first. And I was a Christian, but kind of an autopilot Christian. I wasn't a woke Christian, but I didn't read my Bible and study scripture. If I met an atheist at a bar and he was begging me to convert him to the religion, I wouldn't have been able to do it. That's how pathetic I kind of felt looking back. Like, I don't know scripture well enough. I haven't prepared for this. Charlie had. So that's what I took from Charlie's death was, all right, I got to rebuild myself in a way that is an effective communicator for this country and obviously for my faith.
Well, we're too many people on the left, they put the Bible down, so forth. I mean, okay, maybe the supernatural parts they can get people to disregard and so forth. But there is a lot of history in the Bible also, which the left tries to say, no, there's not. And whatever, but still, basically the messages the Bible gives us are moral messages. They are not, we're not told it's okay to go marry a 9-year-old child. Okay. That is a sin. In fact, it says that, God, that much I know, that God says better off you put a heavy stone around your neck and drown in the sea than face him for what you did to children, doing evil to children. And I think that that's going to be on Judgment Day a big prosecution thing against the people who are for all these child mutilations with this gender dysphoria thing.
Well, yeah. Go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
You mentioned something, and as far as I'm concerned, we're all in the state of becoming. We're all evolving. So, declaring that you're not perfect is not actually a put down or a diminishment of where you are. I believe that your status, if you're in the state of becoming, then your status is exactly where you need to be, and you're going to evolve. And to some extent, you're blessed, because only while you're becoming do you have the opportunity to constantly explore and grow, which is vibrant, So, for me, just so this way, I'm not what I would call 100% Christian. I also follow other teachings. Mm-hmm. I'm about 35, 40%, but I do carry one of these. What? Okay. I have for over 6 months now. And partially that was because of Charlie Kirk, because I watched his stuff and I couldn't stand him sending messages and using the Bible all the time. I said, you got to go ahead and you got to teach this in a more generic way. But you're right. I have to agree with you. But I wish you could find another way of saying it, so this way the average guy who's not into Christianity could get it. And I kept listening to him, and I kept listening to him. And first I started wearing this to support the Second Amendment, First Amendment. Mm-hmm. Okay, because there's churches being destroyed, Jewish temples, so forth like that. The terrible thing in Australia. So the thing is that I did it initially for that, and also because listening to him made me feel closer to my Christian past. Yeah. So I'm sorry, I went off on the deep.
No, it's because he was a authentic and great example of what a Christian should be, and he really had conviction and believe it. He didn't just have, he wasn't just out there saying, I believe in Jesus Christ and all of you are wrong. It was that he had studied. And this is what's happening to me. I mean, I'm reading all these books right now on the different religions too. And I've always been interested in this stuff, but the history of Christianity and what's interesting about Christianity to me that separates it from all the other religions is that the more that I scrutinize Christianity, actually, the more confident I become that it's true and it's real. But I think that part of the problem in this country, why you had that feeling, Mike, in the past, before you kept watching, Charlie, about, finding a more generic way, I think a lot of it has to do with how we've all been influenced by the left's campaign against the founding of the country to rewrite that history. And my message isn't to anyone that, hey, you better be a Christian, you must be a Christian. You can not like tomatoes, but love, I don't know, pizza, so people are beneficiaries in this country of Christianity, even if they're not Christian. And the reason I think you can't not talk about Christianity is because it's built into this country's DNA and history. And that shouldn't be offensive to people. No other country that has a majority religion, like, if you go to Bali in Indonesia and it's like the only place that's not Muslim, it's Hindu. No one's apologizing for being, Hindu there. You go to any Muslim country, they're certainly not apologizing for, having their civilizations and their laws even that stem from, because at the end of the day, whether it's Christianity or the left or Marxism or your frame, the construct of your country, it's got to come from somewhere. So like this idea that, separation of church and state, oh, well, you can't have Christian ideas, that lead to, policy decisions or whatever. That's ridiculous. Of course you can. Some ideology is fueling policy. Some ideology, whether it's, religious based or something else. And, Charlie Kirk was excellent. He went and did one interview. He was on stage somewhere and he spoke about the state constitutions and how there were requirements, even in many of those state constitutions, that you actually be a Christian to run for office and so on and so forth. But I can think back, guys, so I went to a Christian high school, right? A Jesuit, all male, a Catholic school. And I remember in my classes at a Christian school, a Catholic school, they were teaching me that this country wasn't really founded by Christians, but by deists. And this is one of those arguments that I still hear by leftists today.
Yeah.
And there were a couple people, a handful, that were quote unquote deists, which simply believe that, basically God created and then backed away. And, but most of the founding fathers were absolutely Christian. And our Constitution, I mean, the Mayflower Compact, God was mentioned as the purpose, of that voyage and what they were setting out to do. So, I don't think that I think that you should be able to not be a Christian in this country and acknowledge and appreciate that this is a Christian country. It's not like Iran. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
It's but that's the foundation. We're not a theocracy.
No, people misunderstood or purposely miscategorized the separation of church and state. They purposely do that because they don't want religion. They don't want anybody having any religion except the state, to the state. The state is the God that they want you to worship.
Well,
right
it's funny.
Sorry?
Oh, no, just before. It's funny. I talk about that in the book, too. Separation of church and state. It's a myth. It's not in the Constitution, obviously. It stems from a letter that was written to the Danbury Baptists. And the irony is it's actually the opposite of what they claim it to be. The Baptists were being persecuted at that time by these other denominations, and they were worried that the local government was going to use their authority to come down on the Baptists and prevent them from worshiping. So when Jefferson talked about, separation of church and state, that it was about protecting your right, to practice your religion. It wasn't to get, Christianity or, the Baptist, denomination out of politics. It was to get, them out. It was about getting them out of your business and letting you worship freely. So it's so outrageous that they've used this to,
Yeah, it was a promise that we wouldn't be like England, where the English church is the official religion of the country. And what the separation of church and state means that no religion is going to be forced upon you. You can worship as you wish, according to the First Amendment. And the government is never supposed to tell you how to worship or who to worship or what to worship. That's all it means. It doesn't mean that a priest or a rabbi or a minister cannot run for public office. Obviously,
Americans
they
don't
can't.
have to worry about that because there is a movement right now that to eradicate religion altogether in the hearts and minds of all things. There's an anti-religious movement in this country.
And it's been working.
Spiritual, So the thing is that, it's religion. I believe the First Amendment is the most powerful amendment because without our capacity to be able to speak our minds, without our capacity to be able to communicate and gather with other individuals, and without our ability and capacity to be able to pursue our spiritual path in a religion, of our choice, you have basically assaulted an individual's right to think. And so there you go. I am aware of the fact that freedom of religion, church and state and all that stuff is about protecting religion from the tyranny of government. And we know what that looks like in other countries. We've seen it over and over again. But the biggest problem in this country right now is a lack of belief in God, period. End of statement. Atheism has become an intellectual fad. If you're an atheist, that proves that you're not going to get suckered by these religions. You're not playing that old game. The thing is that they're throwing the baby out with the bathwater because spiritual life, having a spiritual connection, can get you through times like no other. And what did they do during the COVID experience? They denied you access to church. That is atrocious.
You could go to a Hooters, but not to a church.
Yep.
Terrible. So the thing is, that's unheard of. But the thing is that where do you go when you start losing hope in the world?
Go to the Democrat Party.
Yeah.
Atheism has been growing the past, I'd say, half century or more. However, recently I've seen a couple of headlines, haven't read the thing, saying that Gen Z is returning to religion, which is a good sign. And some of the headlines I've seen seem to credit Charlie Kirk's assassination and people looking into him and what he said and so forth, and realizing that, there's more than just what we're doing here on this earth.
Well, he was somebody who was willing to die for those beliefs. So I think when you see somebody that's martyred, whether it be the first Christian martyr, Stephen, who was stoned to death, or the Apostle Paul or Peter, when you see somebody willing to die for those things, a person recognizes that maybe there's some truth to it because, most people don't want to die. They're not willing to accept that price. And of course, as a Christian, Jesus promises persecution if you follow him. So you can expect it. And Charlie followed that, to its ultimate conclusion. But yeah, I mean, I think that young people, I mean, there are a lot of people who are unhappy. There are Christians who are unhappy too. Um, but people who don't even have a faith background, just they can recognize something's missing in their life. I mean, especially if you're on the left. What I say in the book, and I try to explain this, is like why is the left asymmetrically violent in this country? There's no comparison. I mean, you can make comparisons now to jihadists and radical leftists. One does it in the name of religion, the other in the name of progress. But nonetheless, it's domestic terrorism, and you have people celebrating the pain in the aftermath. But the left,
because they don't believe there's a punishment later on. They can get away with whatever you do is you do, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, people don't. A lot of people don't like the problem in the Christian church, for example. Just to go back there for a second, is that there's a lot of arrogance, and people just want to go to church and have their sins approved. Like, to your point, you said something earlier, Mike, that along these lines. You'll have to refresh exactly what it was, but it's making me think of this. People just want to be made to have everything approved all the time. They don't want guardrails. They don't, and this moral framework exists actually to give you greater fulfillment in your life. These leftists that are following the leftist vision and the ideology, they're consumed with what? Hatred and rage. And ultimately, in a lot of cases, it leads to violence because the left is promising utopia, but that person is only experiencing darkness. And if you're a farmer trying to plant seeds in barren soil over and over and over and over again, and it doesn't bear any fruit, you're going to get angry. You're going to get frustrated. And Charlie Kirk was so powerful because he went to young people, and in a very articulate way, he would explain to them, there is another path. And if you follow it, you will find fulfillment. And he wanted people to be happy. See, the left doesn't want people to be happy. They want you to be enraged. Yes, independent. Charlie Kirk went to people and you could sense that he wanted them to be free. He wanted them to be happy. And he was able to show them how. And the left couldn't abide that.
Well, there's two things that I think that religion, a wholesome religion, should be doing for its people. Number one, it should be teaching them how to evolve into something greater. Okay, and the other thing is that it should give them, it should give them a direction to go when all else fails. So the thing is that there's one of the problems. See, the thing is, there's natural law, and that works just fine too. It's like if you go ahead and if you do certain things and you're disrespectful of the status quo of reality, there's consequences for that. Okay, if you go ahead and if you make a life out of stealing from other people, there's two things going to happen. Number one, there's most likely going to be retribution from somebody you've stolen from. And number two, you won't trust anybody because you've pretty much proven that people aren't trustworthy by your own acts. You've invalidated any positive view of others, And so the thing is that you create your own hell that way. People that live a corrupt life see nothing but corruption. That's how they interpret the world. And that is the guaranteed immediate punishment for choosing an unwholesome, unnurturing existence. If you're a thief, everybody's a thief. Everybody's a thief, whether they know it or not.
Projection.
So the thing is that the beautiful thing about wholesome religions is they help you evolve. They tell you there's more. they actually, they have faith in you. A good religion has faith in its practitioner. It says you can do better. You can grow. It's
Become
as
a
though
better
you
person.
have an eternal parent constantly holding you by the hand and say, just do it. This works. This tradition works. That's why it's still alive. So I don't know. I went off into the weeds again.
You sound like a 100% Christian right there. That's a great that's a great analysis of what Christianity does promise, and that's the point. Charlie Kirk represented somebody who wanted to better himself. He always sought self-improvement, right? And and that's the charge we have, if to continue his legacy. His race is finished, ours is just beginning, truly. And that's what has to happen, that hunger for self-improvement. But people on the left, they don't want to improve because the left tells them someone's in their way, that they can't possibly improve. And so that's what you just articulated there, which is so interesting because, again, I would say this is a Christian nation. That whole idea that's American, that you can pick yourself up by the bootstraps is there's a incorporation of Christian theology in that, we aren't perfect. And we can improve. In the case of Christianity, we are called to put our faith in Christ. But it is that we are sinners. We are imperfect. And that's okay. That's okay. Everyone's imperfect. That's the point. We're on a level playing field. No one is better than another person, but we're all called to be better.
Right.
See, but to the Marxists, to the leftists, everything is a zero-sum game. That's why the Marxists will tell you, oh, there's only so much wealth, and the rich are taking everything. They ignore the fact that people have come by and have increased the wealth of the world itself because they contribute something and they expand the amount of wealth that is there to be used and shared by all. Okay, I don't know if you're catching my drift here.
Yeah, the problem with communism is it's a religion, and everybody who becomes one of the political leaders becomes an acolyte in that particular religion, and because the government will house all of the wealth of the nation, they get to utilize the privilege of being in their position.
Yeah. I mean, look, Mamdani, Democrat socialist. The guy is a spoon-fed, chauffeured immigrant. His parents are millionaires. AOC was a bartender. And now, she just threw herself a $50,000 party in Puerto Rico.
Oh, she's worth $30 million.
Yeah. So Bernie Sanders, multiple homes. And these are the people preaching about, and it's like, how do you keep taking these people seriously? I mean, I've never had the mentality that was even where I think it was even possible, probably because of my parents, I guess, but my brain was never ripe for recruitment into something like that, because it's just like, I mean, I recognize frauds and snake oil salesmen, and it's obvious. Mamdani, it's like he wins. I need your money. All the little people, give me your money. I need your money to fund this and that. I mean, it's just like, and you're still gonna listen to this guy? Unreal.
Yeah, and he's going to tax the rich, and everybody knows that the rich are the ones who can afford to move out if they have to, or they can keep their homes here but just change their residence to a home somewhere. In some other state, which they already have.
Well, it has that little organization of Muslim policemen going around the security force. And the thing is that they're driving around in cars that look just like police cars. They might as well be cops. And no dogs in that neighborhood allowed. You can't sell any bacon in that neighborhood, and
women can't,
5 o'clock in the morning, everybody
skirts.
come outside and let's do some praying. So it's like, the Sharia law and all this other stuff, it's like, I'm sorry, this is not a Muslim nation. This is an independent nation. It's a Judo Christian nation. And if you want to do that stuff, go to your little mosque and do it there, but stop imposing on people. And why aren't the civil laws being followed? You're not supposed. I know it's against the law to go ahead and make a lot of noise at 3, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning. Especially on a Sunday or Saturday. I know that's disturbing the peace.
And then they get annoyed if church bells are going off on a Sunday.
Well, of course, they'll also arrest you if you're outside an abortion clinic silently praying. So it's
in
like
England, yeah, definitely.
And they firebomb the
health clinics. I mean,
that's right. Yeah, that's right. I
not
forgot
health
that.
clinics. Those clinics that help women without making abortion the first choice.
Yeah.
Drew's got something to say.
No. I mean, earlier I was just thinking, you're not supposed to say this, but Islam is incompatible with the West. It's incompatible with the United States of America. And that's not to say that Muslims can't live here, but Muslims have to be willing to give up some of what they actually believe in order to make that work, right? That's my point. But Islam itself is a religion of domination. And there's no difference between Islam and leftism. Both seek domination, both seek submission. And when there is no submission, they turn to violence. And the only difference is Islam does so in the name of Allah, and leftists do it in the name of progressive politics. But the ideologies are the same.
As far as I'm concerned, Allah is a construct simply established in order to go ahead and create their little battlefields throughout the world to basically, usurp people and force them into an Islamic nation or death. So, no, it's just it is the enemy of freedom as far as I'm concerned. And we say it all the time. Sorry, but you're stuck with us now. And we agree with you completely. As a matter of fact, your explanations, your terminology is far superior to mine just now. Yeah. You know what, Roy? I'm done with you being on this podcast. I want Drew. Drew, just you and me from now on. Forget Roy.
Oh man,
you're much better.
Never
really.
Never.
The way I see it, it's like you can compare Islam and the left, the socialist Marxist left, to Hitler and the Third Reich and the Japanese Empire. They were going to conquer the world, and then at the end, they were going to go at each other to see who was going to be supreme.
Yep.
That's what would eventually happen if we allow it.
They consume their own.
Yeah.
You either bring food or you are food.
Do you see any way out of this problem with these Muslim takeovers of certain cities and so forth? And you have no-go zones where you can't even go in there if you're not a Muslim because you're taking your life in your hands. It's as bad as walking through certain parts of Newark nowadays at night if you're white.
Well, the way out is just to be bold with talking about it the way we're talking about it, and elect people who are going to talk about it that way too. You're guests in this country, and we're not going to tolerate this. We don't have to tolerate this. And, I don't hate any of you because you're Muslims or anything else. But those of you that want to, overreach, I'm going to slap your hand. That's not going to work here. And that's okay. I mean, that's the thing too. There are a lot of Muslim countries these people could go live in. Why aren't they there? Why are they here?
Because they're here to conquer us from within. That's what 1980, I think it was, that the Muslim Brotherhood wrote down their plan to take over the West from the inside. In 1955, I think it was, or sometime in the 50s, there was a law passed by Congress saying that Muslims could not hold public office in the United States. My understanding is, I haven't really checked it out, But my understanding is that Obama, or under the Obama administration, that law was done away with, or repealed, whatever. And this is why you have places like Minneapolis and New York and other places that have Muslim mayors and Muslim council members and so forth. And they are, while they're not officially instituting Sharia law, they are using Sharia law to run wherever they have power.
Yeah, I mean that's the long term objective, and the reason you have all these Muslim politicians now is because of the immigration. Somalians, for example. They're all. I mean, they live in a district and they're voting for one of themselves to go and represent them, and they're not even proud to be American. I mean, they constantly talk about how great Somalia is. Well, if Somalia is so great, go back to Somalia.
Exactly. Why come here?
We're not the world's trash can, and we don't have to accept the world's trash. And that's not to dehumanize anybody, but that's just to say we are not a trash receptacle. So just because you're from another country that's in the third world, you don't have a right to just come here. The objective of immigration is to improve this country. It's not to help other countries offload their poor, offload their uneducated. There should be a high bar of entry to come to the greatest country on the face of the earth.
There used to be.
Go to the JV team for a while before you want to come to varsity. There are other countries you can go and work on yourself. Go to France. Go somewhere else. You're not ready for the United States yet, and you're definitely not ready to come here unless you're willing to profess that this is the greatest country ever created, and you want to be an American. And you better speak English too, by the way.
I heard somebody say the other day that Elon Musk could have gone to any country in the world, but he would not be Elon Musk if he'd gone anywhere else, because no other country in the world would have given him the opportunity to do what he's done. Nowhere else.
Yep, that's true.
And meanwhile, it should be criminalized for our politicians to reward people who come here just to live off the government dole. Okay? They're living off our taxpayers. They're not contributing anything. Used to be people came to this country because they wanted to better their lives and the lives of their families. Okay? But, even my father, married an American citizen. She was raised over in Portugal. They got married. She came here. It took over a year for her to get him to be able to come over here. Meanwhile, he had to have guarantees from people here that if he couldn't get a job or if he became disabled, they would take care of him. There was no welfare. There was no government thing. That's it.
Well, the biggest problem is the fact that during the Biden administration, it was a free ride. They said, hey, you come over here, we're going to give you everything that you need for free. Free medical, free education. We're going to give you a credit card. We're going to fly you in, whatever it takes.
And
so the thing is
free.
that if you're not doing so great in another country, and then all of a sudden somebody in the United States is just giving this stuff away, you're going to take advantage of it. So a lot of these people simply took advantage of this corrupt regime, also known as the Biden regime. The thing is that, so to some extent, it's not really the fault of these illegals. They were coaxed into coming here. They were brought in. They were enticed. Now we need for them to go. Sad as that may be for them, the fact of the matter is Americans are done basically paying their way. And we have some really solid talent out there taking care of business and getting rid of these cats. And it's unfortunate that a number of innocent people got sucked in on it, but their whole purpose in life was to go ahead and undermine the purpose of the Biden regime was to undermine the voting and the economic infrastructure and basically cause more chaos.
Make us all dependent on government because everything went to shit.
Yeah, well, yeah, bigger. Let's have trillions and trillions of dollars more in debt. Debt is good. That is the coin of the day. So, again, I feel sorry for a lot of these people for being basically coaxed into coming in, but it's time for them to go. The free ride is over.
Well, I read that 800,000 have been deported already, and more than twice that number have self-deported.
Yeah,
That's
over a
because
million have
we stopped.
voluntarily left.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
stopped giving them the handout.
I mean,
Well,
you can't. It's not physically possible to deport every single person who has come in here illegally. That you do what you can, but ultimately you want self deportation, and that's perfectly humane too. All you have to do is eliminate the welfare that brought them here, that they're dependent upon, and they will go back home. And you know, anyway, as you articulated earlier, though, I mean that's the difference in immigration in the past when people talk about early 1900 early 1900s. We didn't have welfare, so people came here, and the only thing they got was opportunity. And now people aren't coming here because they crave opportunity or to be an American. They just know that they can get freebies that are paid for by you and me. And I'm not going to do that. And we're not going to do that. And you don't have a right to my pocket. And you know what? Frankly, we're doing these other countries a disservice because we're not requiring their citizens to improve their own countries. We fought an American Revolution to create this country. We fought a civil war to protect it. We've been to war, World War II, to save the world. So you know what? Maybe you should have a revolution in your own country. Maybe you should figure out what our founding fathers figured out through experience about how government should work and how a people should be treated and what that relationship between the government and the citizen should be if you want to have a better life. And you know what? We already have the blueprint. All you got to do is do what we did. Have at it, but you're not coming here.
And the first thing we can do is get out of the UN because we don't belong in there anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's another load.
Is there any other subject you'd like to touch on?
Oh man, well I would do this all day, but I gotta get my oldest out of her. I gotta wake her up from her nap.
Okay.
But
right now, raising toddlers is such a chore and everything. But someday you're gonna miss it. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I still put my oldest down for her nap every day. When my 11-month-old is finally wants to nap with me and is napping like she's been doing it for a long time now. I'll contact napper. I mean, I love it. When I can do it. But it's such a blessing.
God bless you.
It's a lot of work, but it's worth it.
That's it then.
Well, anyway, I want to thank our guest, Drew Allen, publicist and published author. And I'm asking everyone out there, if you enjoyed this podcast, to please rate the show, give us a review, share it with all your friends, and hopefully that'll help our algorithm, and we can reach even more people.
That's right.
Thank you very much.
Go buy my book.
I really appreciate it.
And stay put until we're uploaded.
Okay. All right. Have a good night, everyone.